Dr. Peter King is recognized as a builder, administrator, and athlete. His commitment, organizational skills, and love of rowing were a vital asset to the success of the 68 crew that participated in the Olympic trials. Peter's most notable contribution to rowing at Western was coordinating the purchase of the team's first two competitive racing shells, 4+ and 8+, from the Italian company Donneratico. Peter was also a strong contributor to the lightweight men's team, bringing back the first Henley medal for the London Rowing Club, winning the 145-pound Coxed 4 in the summer of 1968. However, his contribution to rowing goes well past the Western rowing program. As past president of the Ottawa Rowing Club, founder of the Head of the UWO Regatta, past president of the ORA, and editor of Canada's rowing magazine, The Catch, Peter has dedicated a large portion of his life to improvement of rowing on a national level. A Canadian Forces Sports Hall of Famer, Peter is responsible for launching Rowing Canada's awards program to recognize volunteers and establish the Canadian National Championships. Much of what rowing in Canada is today is thanks to Peter King.
Peter is not a tall individual, but he makes up for that lack of height in his, he's very highly motivated, and he has a lot of perseverance. He doesn't give up. I'd say that's really Peter's characteristic.
Peter has a very interesting background. He's a very accomplished academic. He was a very accomplished fencer at Western. He's a chef. He was president of student council at McGill, did an MBA, a very distinguished career with the Canadian government. And somehow he also found time to be the business manager of our 68 group. Without Peter's business acumen and fundraising ability and hours that he spent on the phone talking to Italy to get our first Donneratico boats over here. He organized the house. We all lived in a fraternity house. He hired a chef so that we would eat properly. And he made the arrangements for the boats to come.
Peter always carried himself with an air of refinement. He was a generous guy, especially with his time. He taught me how to drive in his 1968 Mercury Cougar. He was really patient because, I was not a quick study. He made arrangements for me to have a part-time job at the Ivy School of Business just so that I could afford to stay in the frat house we all shared in the summer of 1968. He gave his heart in every workout, and it was an honor for me to be part of the winning 145-pound crew with him.
Peter was a quiet strength because he was working out in a single shell at the time, and while he had the benefit of Doc's coaching, he nevertheless had to push himself without the benefit of a Cox or others in the shell to keep going as hard as possible. We loved his sense of humor, and his patience with some of the testosterone-led ridiculous comments and the antics that we had in those days.
Peter has a voice that just grabs your attention. He was in charge of communicating with Donneratico, the Italian boat manufacturer, and the 4 and the 8 were not being delivered as scheduled. Given the time difference between Canada and Italy, it turned out that sometime between 3 and 4 a.m. was the best time to call Italy. So when Peter called, no one slept. We didn't mind. His booming voice yelling in Italian gave us the feeling that something was just being done. The boats would arrive, of course, and they did. But to this day, whenever I hear a loud Italian, Peter comes to mind.
Peter was the quieter of the group, and so he was a more sophisticated and quieter fellow that the rest of us at first weren't quite sure what to make of, and they grew to respect him a lot because of his ability to do things on his own and provide a quiet support for what we were doing and putting up with us when we had the crazy moments in rowing as he did in those days and probably still do. I think those are the main things that I would say about the two of them.
So Rick trained us on the water, and Peter kept us together off the water. And so that was important for the 68 effort. After that, like Murphy, he was inspired by Fern. He wanted to build rowing in the country. He went to Ottawa, where he became president of the Ottawa Rowing Club and developed that club. Became a vice president of the Ontario Rowing Association, and then its president and a vice president of Rowing Canada. But probably his most significant contributions in Canadian rowing were as the editor of Catch magazine for 25 years. So Peter really was the voice of rowing in Canada. He did a great deal to tie rowers together from coast to coast.
Well, I don't know how big you are, but he was a tiny individual and he wasn't in good shape. But at the end of the 2-year period, he was an outstanding oarsman. But he did that just because he tried so hard and never gave up, right? And in rowing, those two skills will make up for a lack of natural ability, 100 times over, because rowing takes so much endurance and stamina. So if you don't have those skills, you'll never get anywhere in rowing. I mean, if you're a natural athlete, it certainly helps, but that's not the thing that's going to make you win in the long run.